This is the situation you find yourself in when you start to wonder things about the divine. I don't know if you've ever wondered why you're here, what your purpose is, or if there is a higher power. Maybe you don't believe in such things, and that can be really useful for a lot of people when you are simply not bothering to wonder, or you decide that there is no God, but there's only what you see, or in any sort of combination of things. Inevitably, you're going to come up with a belief system, and it's possible to say that it's better to be skeptical than to believe in something. And it is useful to be skeptical because you're not going to blindly jump to a conclusion without any proof to back it up. So it's different than being cynical, but to be skeptical is actually quite useful. It's just that who's to say that skepticism equals belief, because that would be a false equivalence. But to come to the conclusion that skepticism is always better than believing in something how is that not a belief? So I'm going to give you a correction from my last video, and then we're going to go into how to use this information. The last video I mentioned that Ashira is the counterpart, the female counterpart of Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, and technically archaeological evidence points to Ashira being the partner of El. So there is a difference. Now let's go ahead and put it this way. If you believe X, so if you believe X, what happens if X is true? What happens if X is false? What doesn't happen if X is true? And what doesn't happen if X is false? Because with any religious belief, it starts with what we don't know. It starts from a point of wonder. So someone could either jump to a conclusion and then find reasons to back it up, or someone could approach the situation with a sense of curiosity, wanting to design his or her life. Okay, so what's the point of designing your life? Well, when you design your life, you start with curiosity. On the other hand, you would start with a conclusion, and then where can you go from there? Because the fact is, no one knows. And with any religious belief, it starts with what we don't know. It starts from a point of wonder. So in order to trigger urgency, there has to be constructed a consequence. For example, and I'm going to say this not with criticism, but it's just an observation to make a point. With Christianity, with mainstream Christianity, the premise in general, the premise is you're broken. And so most Christian preachers would deliver the message, the underlying message that you're broken. And so what if you are broken? Well, that implies what? That you need to be fixed. Okay, well we've created a problem, and now we have a solution. And we also have to create a consequence. So this is very much like art, because with art, there's also no problem until you invent one. And so what happens with when you want to make art into a business? Well, you have to construct a problem. Because is art broken? Well, if so, in what ways? Is it the skill of the artist, the obscurity of the artist? Is it the sales? Is it the market? What is it? So going back to our topic, example, in Christian belief, let's follow a series of points here. What if you do believe? Well, you'll go to heaven. Okay, well, what if you don't? Well, you'll go to hell. So what doesn't happen if you do believe? well, then you won't go to hell. What doesn't happen if you don't? You won't go to where? Heaven. Okay. So how does that impact my life? When you go and approach things this way, and you could go ahead and you choose something to believe in, or you choose to be skeptical. Either way. Okay, so you choose to be skeptical. Well, what changes because of your skepticism? And how does that affect your life? And say if you believe a certain way, well, how does that affect your life? And ultimately, where do you want to go? How can you reverse engineer it so that you can figure out where you want to go, and then reverse engineer it so you can create a prototype of what you want to happen. So for example, okay, well, what if I want to embrace that divine feminine? Cool. It can be just a distraction, because if there's no consequence, then it doesn't impact lives until it becomes important to you because of your identity. And in other words, whatever you project, like for example, if you find that you need to relate to a higher power, then it helps, because we're always seeking what is like us. So if I'm a man and I want to relate to a higher power, I might decide that God is a man. And so if I do, okay, well, what happens if I do that? Well, then I'll relate to God as a man, Heavenly Father, etc. Okay, well, what if I don't? Well, then I will relate to God as not a man, but a female, the divine feminine, or neither, or some combination of those. Okay, well, what won't happen if I do believe that God is a masculine energy? Well, then, if I do, then I won't relate to God as a feminine energy or a neutral energy. Okay, well, what won't happen if I don't believe that God is a man? Well, then I won't relate as if he were. And so what is the consequence of that? Well, we have to sort of invent one, but the more serious the issue, you're going to have to decide, and you're going to have to determine what changes because of that. How does that affect your life? And so, in conclusion, to conclude this video, the last of my series on this topic, because no one knows the answer, and it helps to design your life in this way. If you don't approach it in this way, but instead, if you come to a conclusion and you're going to want to prove that something's correct. So someone could use religion to make sense of the world and come to a conclusion. Okay, where do you go from there? But what if you want something else? What if you want more than that for your life? Well, find out what I want in the first place, and then I'm going to use my creative curiosity, and I'm going to find out what I want, and then what do I want to know more about? And then I can create a prototype that allows me to have a desired outcome, ultimate destination. And then I can design it towards that, to those ends. And so when you ask questions and you ask to learn, be ready to expose your assumptions, and you'll sneak up on the future, and I promise you it will be right. This is Sean Allen Fenn.